Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to this first webinar of Factora. We are starting today a new series of webinars where we are going to bring you really interesting European open source technologies that are being built in Europe right now that are relevant for cloud, edge computing, HPC, and artificial intelligence as well. So I think hopefully through this series of webinars starting today, you will discover these kind of small pearls and not so much small pearls that we have in Europe all around the continent that are now being used in many exciting projects that we have ongoing. Not only innovation projects funded by the European Union, but also industrial projects where we are trying to build alternative stacks for Europe's digital sovereignty. So, very quick introduction to what Factora is. Factora is an initiative that we coordinate from Open Nebula Systems. Today's webinar and this series of webinars is a collaboration between this initiative under the IPSAI Cloud and two coordination and support actions funded by the European Union, NexusForum and the CISERO project. Factora was launched last year as an initiative to start developing and defining a European sovereign stack for AI. And part of this exercise that we're doing is precisely this, identifying, mapping all these great technologies that we have in Europe that are relevant for strengthening our technological sovereignty in something that's really critical as AI. And you know, AI factories, AI gigafactories, they require this kind of technology. So we're bringing them together. And today we're bringing them to you and a specific technology for you to discover and find out more about who's behind this technology, how is it being used right now, and how this technology is now being part of different projects. So today we're bringing to you Waldur. If you are in the HPC environment, I'm 100% sure that you've heard of them. Very interesting technology coming from Estonia, actually. For us, is a very nice example of how interoperability is actually implemented on the ground in something as complex as critical as the HPC environments in Europe, which are by nature very dispersed across the continent, very diverse, but also it's very important that users of these facilities can share some resources, can provision resources and tools in one place or another. So Waldur, as you will discover very soon during this webinar, is a critical tool for allowing this interoperability between different HPC environments and also cloud environments, as we will discover soon. So we'll put this the link on the comments so you can explore the technology. You can look at the repo, you can look at the documentation and find out the many integrations of these tools as well with different cloud technologies. And today I want to, well, at this point, I want to welcome Ilya Levinson, the co-founder of OpenNode, which is the company that is developing Waldur. So Ilya, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting.
Well, I think the first question, I have many questions for you, and I think that people will be very interested to follow up with you and find out how actually you can help them in their own environments or with new integrations with their respective technologies. But I mean, I wanted to start from the basis. So why on earth, because it's not easy and we know there are a lot of challenges, why you decide to create OpenNode, the open source company behind Waldur? What's the story of your company? Tell us more about
that. Sure. So maybe it would be more correct to say that Waldur was created as part of the OpenNode activities. So OpenNode initially was a consultancy company where we were helping to build solutions based on the primarily open source technology. And as doing that, in particular, this was a project in the, well, not so much European, but in the Middle East, for building the government cloud based on the open source technologies. We realized that there is a gap that does not allow full self-service enablement for the government agencies based on the technology that was available at the moment when we were building that, which was maybe a bit more than 10 years ago. Specifically, that cloud was built on using OpenStack, and there was a small thing related to the fact that in order to provision a OpenStack project, you needed to have something extra, so something which did not came out of the box. Another thing that happened was that besides the infrastructure as a service, there was a need to integrate additional types of services, specifically platform or software as a service. And there was a bit of a gap in the way how to coordinate or how to orchestrate creation of that with the common accounting. And we essentially, and I think this was the motivation for creation of something that is currently called Waldur. It started as a set of essentially somewhat independent scripts that helped to do this or that. But as the time progressed, we went essentially from independent scripts to more coherent backend service. Then we built on top of the user interface. And then basically we started getting larger adoptions from the more slightly different communities. So from the HPC centers, in particular, the one in Estonia. And
because you have a very close relationship with the university there, right?
Evolution.
You have a close relationship with the university, right?
Yes. So this was actually one thing that happened. So there was a, I'm not sure, second or third iteration of the Estonian national computing infrastructure, where it was agreed that the Estonian national, basically TISE is the abbreviation, will adopt Waldur as a common platform and joint development. So the co-development of Waldur has happened successfully, I think, over the last years. And yeah, so this is now slightly more expanding as well. So we have more organizations contributing to the development. And that's actually was quite beneficial. So in that sense that we are essentially driven by the use cases that are coming from the rather collaborative environments, whether it's more, let's say, organizations that are somewhat have to collaborate with each other, like government agencies, or that potentially want to collaborate with each other, like universities. So I think the common case where the Waldur was used was the common properties are basically when there is a need to collaborate across different organizations, and when there is a need to share access to different types of the services. So not a single vertical stack.
Not a single one. Yeah. And in that sense, the role of the company now is, just, I understand, as an open source company, you provide support to people that deploy Waldur on their
exactly.
environments, and the classical classic open source.
Yes, Waldur does not have any closed source. Like it's not a a premium model. So whatever we have is outside there.
Okay, great. No, I understand the. I mean, the benefits of it happens sometimes that an open source product gets born in this kind of environment where you're working very closely with a single customer or a single user that at some point gets involved in the development, but also benefits the project because it's the main source of your requirements. So it helps you refine your product to make it answer the actual needs, right? So yeah, very interesting model.
Yes, I don't think it's a very healthy model in the longer perspective. So in that sense, I think that
you have to diversify at some point, right? Go out there.
Because also Waldur is a relatively complicated product, which is aimed at, well, it works with quite advanced deployments, but it can also scale back to the more simplistic cases. But if you only have very advanced deployments, you never think about the simplicity, and you never try to scale back in a sense with the features to enable, let's say, the starting organizations. And I think in that sense, we have been quite lucky in a sense to have a collection of different customers of Waldur that represented quite a variety of
with different needs, right? Yeah. Makes sense. Makes total sense. Yeah. Well, we've been talking about Waldur for 10 minutes. I think people might want to see it in action. So I'll leave it to you. Let's tell us something more about the technology itself, how it works.
Sure. Right. So essentially, I'll just show a couple of slides to clarify. So essentially, the Waldur is intended as a software that enables the digitalization of the centers that provide services to other organizations or groups. So essentially, Waldur tries to solve several typical problems that these centers have in a certain configurable way. For example, one of them is the basic case of user onboarding. So how do you get the users in? How do you make sure that they have correct privileges? How do you make sure that there is a reasonable level of delegation so that the central operations will not be overloaded? The team and project management is, in some sense, a core of Waldur multi-tenancy model that allows to have a quite significant level of self-service delegated to the, for example, if you're talking about the academical domain, to the organizations like universities or research groups, so that they can essentially self-manage and work in the way how it's convenient for them. The service offering management is essentially a service catalog management along with the pricing and the policies of access. Beyond this catalog, we also have and support the actual provisioning of the resources and the follow-up management of the resources. And finally, from the operator perspective, we bind together also the help desk, which essentially allows to have a quick access to have to correctly connect the resources that have issues with the help desk to resolve things faster. And on top of that, we have the reporting that essentially is a cross-cutting concerns across many things. Waldur is pluggable, so not all the modules are used in all the deployments. So essentially, we are talking about several main modules. Probably Marketplace Core is the main one, which defines how the services are being defined and provisioned. Then for some specific integrations, we can have more fine-grained. So for example, it can be a plugin for provisioning of Slurm resources or OpenStack or OpenNebula or AWS or something else. We have a cross-cutting things related to the access, whether through the policies on the identity of the users or the policies from where the users are coming from in terms of the network security. The integration with external service desks, as well as behavioral policies. So basically, you can say that the consumption of the resources would be shaped based on the speed of consumption. So if you have, for example, expectations on the capacity planning in a certain way, then Waldur can enable a lightweight way for doing that through cost or consumption policies. And finally, a way to talk to users through broadcasts and various types of notifications. Last year, a couple of years ago, actually, but basically last year, we have added also an extension for the application and review portal, which is a popular method of requesting and getting resources to the in the academical world. So these are all different modules that can be switched on and off depending on the type of the deployment needed. So in a sense, Waldur was designed always to be open and flexible. So we try to make sure that all the complexity which is inside Waldur can be switched on or off to fit the deployment of Waldur exactly, so that the business fit would be there. And that it's friendly both in terms of the visual interface, but also in terms of the integration. So we have the technical SDKs, the configuration management modules like in Ansible and Terraform and so on. So basically, to make sure that different stakeholders that are integrating with Waldur are, well, not super happy, but reasonably happy. And finally, Waldur is quite critical in terms of where it's deployed. Like it's a gate for quite many sensitive resources, so we invest quite a lot into the security of the supply chain, of the so into pen testing, into supply chain security, in constant scanning, and in general development security. Before switching to the actual thing, I just wanted to highlight. So basically, Waldur is designed to be multi-tenant, and we have organization as the core unit of the multi-tenancy that can split itself into projects, which already then can have resources which can cost some money. So this structure basically gives us ability to have a quite fine-grained control over the costs, as well as reporting on who used what. And what we have seen in the recent years especially is that the academic organizations that were previously quite oblivious to the question as to how much things cost are becoming more and more aware of that. And in many places where we before had a toggle to avoid or to conceal showing the prices for certain services, now this toggle has been removed, and instead the actual price is shown now. So this helps to maybe make it more clear that the resources are not free, but they actually do something. And so the architecture of Waldur is quite simplistic. So we have all the components behind our open source. So we try to keep it simple and stable. I don't want to maybe spend too much time on that. You're very welcome to go to the website and see in details how things are built. Basically, there are two types of the deployments of Waldur. One type is when Waldur is used in order to consolidate access to quite many different types of the services behind a single user portal. So that's a classical situation when you have, let's say, a single consortium offering a single portal, but offering different types of resources behind. Alternative is that, and this was, for example, the use case for the EuroHPC Lumi machine, which was co-funded by a number of countries. And then Waldur is essentially used as a interface for the external resource allocators in order to essentially propagate decisions about the resource allocations through Waldur to the underlying services. So working with Waldur and generates quite a lot of different interesting metrics that can be used for observability, either through basic charts or potentially enriching them with additional information about how things used and for which purpose, so that you can have live dashboards about the actual benefit that the infrastructure can provide. And over time, this has grown to be used by several organizations, highlighting here some of them. In particular, if we're talking about the European ones, the EuroHPC Federation platform has a component which is based on Waldur. And also the UK AI research infrastructure is using the Waldur-based allocation mechanism. And very happy that also the Swiss National Supercomputer Center has also switched to Waldur for the user and project management. Yes, so I think that maybe I could also show how it actually looks like. Right. So basically, we invest quite a lot in branding. So different portals based on Waldur can look slightly differently. But probably the main idea is that we have some organizations that are potentially having access to a number of resources that can be limited based on specific policies or based on the profiles of the organizations. These services could be provisioned in a certain automated way or potentially non-automated way. And once provisioned, they basically are then used for management and accessed by the teams of the organizations. So depending on the role of the user, the interface is adjusted. And we see that in practice, majority of the transactions are coming actually not through the web interface, which essentially serves as a REST client, so it's a fully single-based application. But actually, we see that the majority of the usage comes from the integrations. So whether it's, for example, the if I'm talking about the HPC domain, something that connects through OIDC protocol to Open on Demand, which looks up the information about the local username of the user from Waldur and grants the user access based on the user membership. Or it's potentially an Ansible script that runs and provisions the virtual machines and networks in environment. So basically, we see that there are quite many ways how this can be done. And as mentioned before, Waldur has quite a lot of configurability. We are slightly struggling with that, so thinking how to make it a bit more easy to figure out how to and what to fit in. So in some cases, when you have a concept of the help desk, then you can configure your own help desk. So, for example, we support a number of different ones. In some cases, you want to do the credit management and providing some kind of allocations. In some cases, you want to do just free things, maybe controlling with the cost policies a bit what the users can do and so on. So all in all, there are quite many different options of usage of Waldur. It can also be switched to the language of your choice. We're not super happy with some of the translations, but that's so we're essentially trying to or do our best. But if somebody notices bad translations or funny translations, then please tell us. And yeah, I think that's probably it for a very short demo. If something specific, yeah,
that was great. Thank you, Ilya. Actually, I think, well, you saw that the combination of different, I mean, the possibility to access or provision or request access to different Slurm deployments. I think that's something very interesting, probably for people that are watching this that are now looking at the AI factories from industry and trying to understand how they're going to manage all this complexity. And you mentioned already the Euro HPC Federation platform. So using Waldur as one of the main components. So that's actually very, very interesting. And we know the team is working very hard to connect different facilities on the new AI factory. So that's actually very, very promising. I was wondering, how are you dealing with cloud service providers, for instance? Do you see interest also in connecting these HPC environments with environments that are offered or resources that are offered by private cloud service providers?
So we have a couple of integrations. I think we have several integrations which are frankly not used too much. So that's when essentially the integration goes through with hyperscalers, because I have my theory, and that's primarily because the integrated stack that the hyperscalers are offering is it's very hard to build any kind of hybrid strategy if you want to go beyond a basic resource of virtual machine. So if you're using Amazon, then you use Amazon. If you use Azure, then you use Azure. Anything in between is doable, but really hard because you essentially lose
it difficult on purpose, right?
Well, I mean, I don't think they have any incentive to make it easier to use the like alternatives. So I mean, this is quite natural. So yes, I mean, this is quite clear. What we do have is a bit maybe niche integration where with the resellers of the different resources, including the public cloud providers, but there it's primarily about the import of the accounting information from resellers, like global resellers of the resources. So Waldur serves in some sense as an accounting platform as well. And this is then one of the data sources. But from the active resource management, yes, we do have support, but I don't think it's really useful one.
No, but I mean, accounting is something really, really important. I remember, I mean, we've been involved in a number of projects about federation and everyone talking about federation at a technical level until someone raises the hand and says, yeah, but how are we going to manage accounting across all these different providers? And that's a serious
problem. That's what I meant, that the accounting, like integration with the accounting side of the hyperscalers, that's very useful. There I understand why it's happening, and but that's really not, let's say, the level of the integration that you would anticipate if you're talking about the infrastructure management side.
Yeah. Okay, and so we've talked about the Euro HPC. That gives me also an excuse to move to the next question, because Euro HPC is one of the main sources also of funding for different projects, research and innovation, but there's also a whole other universe of programs at the EU level, like Horizon Europe, Digital Europe. And I would like to understand from your side what's been your experience on these programs. Have you participated in some EU-funded research and innovation projects? If you have any recommendations as well as an open source, as a European open source company, if you have to give some recommendations to the European Commission, what would you tell them to make your life easier and make it easier for a company of your type to participate in and contribute to these programs? So how has it been so far?
I must say that as OpenNode, I think we participated only once in a R&D EU-funded project, and that was really not with the Waldur, so this was a bit with a side activity. But as a university connected with the Waldur development, there is a bit larger body of experience with that. Waldur was not Waldur per se, but the services built on Waldur were used in several of such projects. For example, the Estonian National Scientific Computing, basically TICE services were integrated with EOS hub provider services. Unfortunately, that integration basically ended when the project ended. And there was also the, let's say, the service built on Waldur, which was related to the EuroHPC supercomputing services. So Puhuri was used for the biodiversity digital twin project, which essentially was about provisioning of the access and a bit more advanced cases for the orchestration of resources across the different supercomputers. So it's hard to say. In some sense, the business of the open source is not so much different from the business of the software development per se. And let's say before the LLMs, when the costs of the development were actually quite high, this was always a bit of a question as to which extent you have a person working on a service and, let's say, patching libraries that do not really provide any functionality, being eligible for the funding of the project. So it feels that in many cases, the R&D projects underestimate the complexity of the, well, nowadays, especially supply chain attacks. I mean, looking at the recent days of non-stop patching of the systems. And there is probably no guarantee that things will become easier later on. I think that, so I think we tried to stay a bit away from the grant money. I'm not sure whether it was by choice or by laziness, but the grant funding from Horizon was always a bit, how to say, like a small drug that maybe doesn't make you work as hard to get the product better, because there is a relatively small concern about the quality of the output beyond the deliverables. So it's one problem I see with the R&D projects. I'm not sure how this can be solved. I'm not sure if anywhere in the world this is solved. But of course, there is a difference between paying customers and the grant funding. So how to find a healthy balance, I don't know. It would be nice.
It's a challenge for everyone, I guess.
Yeah, I think from our side, it would be quite interesting to participate in a project where we abide by the rules. And I mean, frankly speaking, for us being an open source and very flexible with licensing, it was always a bit easier. So I imagine that it can be harder if the if the product that we will be building would have closed source components. But in principle, we were always very flexible in publishing everything that we do. So that made it easy both for the university side and well, for us as a company to work together. Not doing that would have probably would not have resulted in a good collaboration, as more time would be spent on figuring out who is doing what. But as a company participating in a R&D funded project, which let's say gives you a co-funding of 50%, always raise the question as to, okay, but who will buy that? So there is no, at least in my understanding, typically clear connection between the any funding guarantees, or not even guarantees, any preferential funding beyond the end of the project, which I think is maybe in disbalance.
Well, there are there are conversations now about the sovereign tech fund, right, at European level for open source technology. So that might be, I mean, obviously different from a research program, and might be maybe more appealing, right, for a company.
Yes, but I'm guessing you're talking about this, what's it called, seal levels, right? And of the sovereignty. I have not understood that there is any link between the Horizon funded projects and the requirements for purchasing of that. So if there is a connection there.
I think there are different. I mean, there's this new strategy by the Commission in the making now. So I think they're also trying to figure out how they really get the most out of the funding that is producing open source technologies in the Horizon Europe program, for instance, and then how to support the development of those technologies later on. How this is connected maybe with other things like procurement, where there is a preference for open source in some sectors or some cases. So it's there are lots of things going on, but I think it's actually very interesting that also, I mean, there are a number of initiatives, but including this one, but to understand what are the real needs of a company like yours that has an open source product, has a business model around, and could benefit from this new action.
I think we can be. We have been quite lucky with the customer selections that the sponsor development that we do, for example, feature development and so on. The customers are very willing to let us publish that as well. So we never had a discussion that something should be closed source, and that's actually quite useful. So I would like to give credits to the customers that we have, because essentially without that, that would be a total different story.
Yeah. No, it's very important to have these sponsors and customers that come with this. It happens to us as well, but that they come with a development, but it's very useful that they agree that the contribution goes upstream to the main project, and it benefits other people as well. So, talking about sovereignty, because we're approaching the end of the webinar, but before that, I would like to know, I mean, sovereignty goes beyond the debate around open source, although it's very connected and very closely linked. I would like to understand your personal take on these current debates that are taking place right now. So how do you perceive the debates in Europe and the movement in Europe to be more sovereign from the technological perspective, and what specifically the role that you expect open source technologies like Waldur to play in that?
Yeah, I think that maybe this is a bit more philosophical question, but I think the nature of the open source is the nature of the open source itself is changing a bit because of the LLMs. So now I would expect that if somebody would say that, to point to the GitHub repository of Waldur and say, do the same but better, and to Claude, and wait a couple of days, maybe it would happen. Now, does it mean that and if this person is from, I don't know, some other region, does it mean that this will help them with the sovereignty? Probably not, because I think the main problem with the technology is know-how that currently goes into building something, and how to maintain that, how to make sure that there is enough of the know-how in order to sustain. I mean, for example, so Waldur is essentially the know-how within Waldur that went into that is essentially about the way how organizations could collaborate in an efficient way. There are quite many corner cases, there are quite many fine-grained things, and this comes with experience. I think that while the software artifacts are important, it's more important nowadays to have understanding how things are working, and at least in my understanding, the digital sovereignty could benefit a lot if there would be more people with understanding how things are being built. Like our customer base includes quite a lot of universities and HPC centers, and unfortunately, not many of them are developing. So the number of organizations that are actually developing something of their own in Europe is quite marginal. And I think this is in that sense a problem, that there is a quite good offer typically on the market, especially from the commercial sector. There is not enough of the culture of building something of your own. So you essentially end up paying some licenses fees for the users. And it's not just the control of the solution, which, okay, what can argue whether it's bad or good or inevitable, but it's also the fact that you lose know-how understanding how processes work. And I think this is the corner case. The open source in that sense is, of course, important because that allows you to clearly understand what's happening behind. The closed source solutions, which essentially provide you just the end user feeling without explaining in depth how things are built, will never provide you the same level of transparency. So whether that transparency is needed for somebody or not, this is a different question. So my feeling is that we should have, and like there should be more people that understand that transparency is important, just to understand how things are working, not just blindly trusting the statements from the marketing team.
Okay, very, very interesting approach. Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much, Ilya, for this conversation today, and for presenting the software that you guys have produced. And I think sometimes we take for granted that we do when we produce stuff in Europe, but actually we do, and you're also an example of that. But it's also sometimes very hard. So not only to produce, but as you said, as to maintain this in the long term and make sure that the product evolves along with the needs of your users and customers. So congratulations for the work you guys have been doing, and actually thank you for getting this technology out there in the market, and for maintaining an alternative and a solution that's built in Europe for this sector. So it's a very
What the kind words.
Very, very nice job you did there. Okay. Well, as I said at the beginning, we will put all the contact details, all the information that we've mentioned during the episode today, so people can get the links and you can get in contact with Ilya and the rest of the team and get to know more about Waldur. From my side, just again, thank you for joining us. Thank you everyone for watching this first episode of this series that we are producing with some of the most interesting European open source technologies out there. Just again, a reminder that this exercise, this initiative has been supported by two coordination and support actions, some EU-funded CSAs, NexusForum, and the CISERO project, which is the IPSA CIS Exploitation Office. So very, very thankful to the European Commission for funding this initiative through Horizon Europe and Digital Europe. And nothing else from my side. Just get in touch and keep tuned for the next episode. Thank you again. Bye bye.